You think you know what cruel and unusual means. You hear about lethal injections and solitary confinement, and you think humanity has a dark side. You have no idea. What you're about to see are not just punishments. They are masterpieces of sadism. They are theatrical productions of terror, designed by governments and religious authorities with one terrifying psychological goal in mind. These were perfectly legal, often celebrated, and so horrific they make a modern horror movie look like a children's cartoon. By the end of this video, you won't just know about these punishments. You'll understand a single, terrifying pattern that connects them all, a secret of human psychology that explains why the most civilized societies create the most barbaric ways to die. Let's begin in ancient Greece, the birthplace of philosophy, democracy, and this nightmare. The brazen bull was a hollow statue of a bull, cast entirely in bronze, with a door on the side. The condemned person was locked inside. Then, a fire was lit underneath. But here's where the genius turns to pure sadism. The bull was designed by the inventor, Paralaus, with a complex system of tubes and pipes leading from the inside to the bull's mouth. As the victim began to scream from the searing heat, the pipes would modulate their cries, twisting them into what sounded like the furious bellowing of a live bull. It wasn't just an execution, it was a concert. The crowd wouldn't hear screams of agony. They'd hear the powerful roar of a bull. They turned human suffering into public entertainment. And the final twisted detail, when the tyrant Phalaris was presented with this invention, he was disgusted, and then had his inventor, Paralaus, become the very first person to be roasted alive inside it. If you think a quick roasting is bad, wait until you hear what the ancient Persians devised. They perfected the art of making a man's own body his executioner. This punishment, called scaphism or the boats, is a descent into psychological hell. It starts, bizarrely, with kindness. The victim was force-fed immense quantities of milk and honey until they developed explosive diarrhea. Then, they were stripped naked and placed between two hollowed-out boats, like a human sandwich, with only their head, hands, and feet sticking out. More honey was slathered all over their exposed flesh. And then they were left in the sun. The sweetness would attract every insect for miles. First, they would feast on the honey. Then, they would begin to burrow into the victim's flesh. But that's not even the worst part. The victim was kept alive. Every day, their captors would return to force feed them more milk and honey, prolonging the process, ensuring they were fully conscious as gangs of insects laid eggs in their wounds and vermin began to eat them from the inside out. Death would come, sometimes weeks later, from a combination of dehydration, septic shock, and being literally eaten alive. It wasn't about killing you. It was about turning your body into a living, breathing feast for the bugs. While the West had its brutal methods, Imperial China perfected a punishment that was a chilling combination of cold, bureaucratic precision, and unimaginable agony. It was called lingqi. It translates to the slow process, the lingering death, or most famously, death by 1,000 cuts. This wasn't a frenzied attack. It was a methodical, systematic dismemberment of a living person over a period of hours or even days. A specially trained executioner would use a razor-sharp knife to make small, precise cuts, removing pieces of flesh from thighs, the arms, the chest. But here is where the psychological horror reaches its peak. The goal was not to kill the victim quickly. In fact, they often gave the victim doses of opium, not as an act of mercy, but to ensure they remained conscious and lucid for as long as possible, fully aware as their own body was taken apart, piece by agonizing piece. This was a state demonstrating its ultimate power, the power to deconstruct a human being while they're still living in it. Finally, we arrive at the one punishment so uniquely horrific, so visually obscene, that for centuries historians have debated whether it was even real. The blood eagle is what happens when Viking rage is turned into a ritual. According to the Norse sagas, this was reserved for the most hated of enemies. The victim would be forced to kneel. The executioner would carve the shape of an eagle's wings into their back with a blade. Then, using an axe, he would chop through the ribs, breaking them away from the spine. He would then reach into the body cavity, pull the victim's lungs out through the wounds, and lay them over their shoulders. The final, fluttering breaths of the lungs on the victim's back were said to resemble the gentle flapping of bloody wings. They didn't just kill you, They turned your body into a grotesque work of art, a sacrifice to their gods. So what's the pattern? The bow, the boats, the cuts, the eagle. Why the creativity? Why the spectacle? Because these punishments were never for the victim. They were for the audience. This is the secret of sacred violence and state-sponsored terror. The point isn't to kill one person. The point is to create a spectacle so horrifying, so unforgettable, that it burns itself into the collective consciousness of everyone who sees or hears about it. It's a message. It's the ultimate demonstration of power. This is what happens when you cross us. This is what we are capable of. The methods have become more clinical now. The theater is gone, but the psychology remains the same. The goal has always been to make an example of one, to terrorize the many, and it forces us to look at our own world and ask a deeply uncomfortable question. What are our modern brazen bulls? What are the civilized punishments we accept today that future generations will look back on with absolute horror?